Hi, my name's Jamie, and we're standing in the McMullen Family Foundation Gallery, and today we're going to look at some art together. Sometimes when people walk into a museum, they don't really know how to approach looking at a piece of artwork, and I found when working with the kids, I teach ages usually 10 to 12 here at the museum, and I find that a good way to approach it is from a formalist point of view. So looking at the elements of art rather than trying to figure it out is a good way to approach it. My advice to the kids is always just look. Don't try to interpret right away. Just kind of feel where your eye moves. And in some paintings like this one, my eye is sort of moving like this and jumping, kind of bouncing throughout. Other paintings have different rhythms and different speeds. Here we're standing next to a painting, and rather than telling you the title or artist of this painting, we're just going to start by looking at elements of art. Things like shape, color, texture, and really just to start with actually seeing where your eye moves, just kind of opening up your field of vision. And I'm just going to talk you through where my eye moves. However, your eye may move differently. My eye is sort of drawn down to this bottom portion, and I'm picking up these sort of small lines that are like creating a sense of texture. And I'm also picking it up, and my eye is kind of jumping to where the texture is repeated in other places in the painting. I'm also noticing how the paint is applied, and when you look for a little bit longer, you notice that the colors of the paints are translucent, so the paint seems to be applied in these thin layers. And you start noticing details like on this yellow section up here. It's not just a flat yellow like I first was reading the color as flat, but I noticed that there's almost like this orange yellow layer that's sort of brushed on top of it. And of course, your left brain is sort of telling you to find objects that you know. You might see a man or a plate or like the cat. Try to resist that for the time being. Try to resist the narrative and just let yourself look at the painting. I find that this method of looking is helpful when the paintings or artworks are completely abstract. You can always start from looking at the elements and looking at how your eye moves. Now my eye is picking up some of the reds, and there's a lot of red, but they're all a little bit different. So you have sort of this transparent red here, but then you have these deeper, more crimson reds, and this almost looks pretty thickly applied. So that thickness is repeated in that black too. I'm just now noticing some patterns at the top of the painting where there's black on sort of a dark green. And these sort of zigzags are repeated in other colors sort of throughout the painting. So shape, line, paint application, and then color is a big one. I've looked at this painting a lot, and every time I do, it's sort of my eye does a different dance with it. Just to be looking at a painting can be very engaging, and depending on your frame of mind, anything can be really interesting when you're paying attention to it. I'm just looking at these two sort of yellow rectangular shapes and just noticing the slight difference in color. Areas that are more detailed with smaller shapes, and then where your eye can rest with larger shapes. When you're doing your own artwork, it helps you to know how to look like this too. So I'm always telling the kids, like, when we're looking, we're actually kind of practicing making compositions too. When you're looking, you're really practicing the same thing you're doing when you're evaluating your own composition. Because when we get back to the studio, and they ask me, is this good? I would ask them, you look at it and tell me, is your eye moving in the way that feels right to you? Places where there might be visual tension or feel crowded, that might be a problem for you, or it might be something that you want to keep. You might want that tension. Often with the kids, we talk about visual tangents. So that's where your eye is sort of, there's a tension maybe between these two shapes, there's a tension. And then you have these lines almost touching the edge of that shape. There's this black line. And so your eye might kind of stick there, and you might decide, oh, I'm going to overlap or move that, give that a little more visual space. Or you might like the way that these shapes, these little black shapes almost touch, because it sort of creates an energy or a tension. I think we always feel like we have to explain something, or it should have a narrative, or we want to be able to understand it in a way that we can put words to, when in fact I think looking at art should be an interaction. So it should be an exchange. My eye is moving, and I'm becoming aware of where my eye is made to move, and my eye is made to move because of the elements of art. So it doesn't really need the story. And I think we often think if the art is not representational, then I don't even know how to approach it because I can't put a name to it, when in fact you don't need to put a name to it. That's my approach anyway.